I think we all have a time in our life that's a defining moment that changes the course of the rest of our life. For me, I had two. The first was in the summer of my sophomore year of high school. In the middle of the night, my mother came and awoke my brother and I and brought us down to the breakfast table, where there we sat facing my pastor and his wife. I was raised in the church, and so I was there every time the doors were open, so we were accustomed to having prayer meetings at unusual places and times, but this beat them all in the middle of the night. Within a few moments, though, I saw the flashing lights and I heard the sirens, and paramedics marched into our door and put my father on a gurney to take him to the hospital. But my mother told us what she already knew. He had died in the middle of the night of a massive heart attack. My very first thought after hearing that was, what do I have to do now to help support the family? My mother was from another country and not educated, and working here was difficult. And so I took it on me as my responsibility to do what I could to help support the family. But my second thought that I had was, this will never happen to me. If something were to happen to my husband, I'm going to be able to support our family. Probably more than anything, that set in motion the tendency for me to be very type A, driven, a perfectionist. And when things got difficult, I just always jumped in and did more. I worked harder. I earned top grades in school, and I became a clinical neuropsychologist, a doctor to help other patients, other people who struggled with mental and medical issues. But that drivenness and that perfectionism doesn't always serve you so well, because when times got tough, I just worked harder. The thing that I feared the most did happen. Several years after getting married, my husband was diagnosed with cancer, and the doctors told us to put our affairs in order because he probably wouldn't live 2 more years. About the same time, my mother was diagnosed with lung cancer, and so I became caregiver to both. And I just jumped in and I worked harder. I worked more hours and more hours until eventually I was working 100 hours a week. I would work at my private practice, seeing patients until 11 o'clock, midnight, go home, take a shower, nap for a couple hours, and go back to the office. Until one day I couldn't. I was seeing a patient, and in the middle of an interview I doubled over in pain. It was excruciating, and I knew something was wrong, so I took her up to the front of the office so my staff could get her situation with the next appointment. And I made my way back to my office before throwing up and passing out. I was diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, had to have surgery, and kept alive on IV hydration and nutrition. I went from 113 pounds to 74 pounds and was just a shell of my former self. For 5 months, I was pretty much bedridden, and all I could do was eat, sleep, listen to praise and worship music, and pray. That devastated my identity. I was no longer the doctor, no longer the doer, no longer the perfectionist. I was just me. And depression set in. And during that time, I really didn't know where my worth was. If I couldn't be, if I couldn't do, if I wasn't the doctor anymore, what value did I have? During my recovery period, I had a dream. I dreamt that as a little girl, I climbed up on her daddy's back and we were walking through the woods. Except somehow in my dream, I knew it wasn't my earthly father. I knew it was God. And I jumped down off of his back and I ran ahead on the trail, and I never looked back. When I woke up, I was so disturbed by that image. And I thought, why? Why would I run ahead and not look back? It was like God dropped in my spirit. I've never heard the audible voice of God, but I just knew it was him in my heart saying, just like your earthly father died, you were afraid to look back because you were afraid I wouldn't be there taking care of you. That's why you've gone on ahead all these years, always trying to be your own provider, always trying to do. And when I searched him out and I prayed about it, it was like God said, Michelle, all those things that you were doing were well and good, but I never asked you to do them. You see, I'd been striving all my life, trying to be the good girl, the perfectionist. I was trying to earn God's love. I thought that maybe if I did enough, if I was perfect enough, he would love me and not leave me like my father did. And during that time, it was like he said, don't you understand? I couldn't love you more, no matter what you do. And no matter what you do, I won't love you less. I love you because you are my child. When I went back to work, it was a much different perspective. I went back to work no longer striving, but serving. I went back knowing that God loved me no matter how much or how little I did that day. And maybe you're wondering right now if anyone loves you. And can I just tell you that the same God who loves me loves you. It doesn't matter what you've done in your past or what you haven't done. He loves you regardless. He loves you because you are his child. You could serve him in ministry work from the time you got up until the time you go to bed, and he won't love you more. And you could decide not to ever do another thing for him, and he won't love you less. You see, God loves you simply because you're you.